Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. This is the 49th part of What If Deku Had a Robot Wolf. I hope you enjoy. Link to the original story and author in the description. Chapter 49, Forgiveness. Minoru was depressed. He was walking through the forest on UA's grounds, distracting himself with throwing practice. Due to his quirk, he needed to be very good at throwing his balls around, so he needed to have a good throwing arm, which he did. Despite his small size, he actually did well at baseball. The throwing aspect of it, anyway, swinging and catching wasn't his strong suit. He didn't exactly need to be training his throwing arm today, but he needed to do something to distract himself. Ever since he had his revelation that he's been causing the girls discomfort with his actions towards them, he'd been trying to curb that habit. Not easy when it's how you've been acting for years. There was also the problem with Izumi's new costume. Yes, he liked it. It was hot, sexy, and looked good on her. Bunny girls are always sexy. But there was a problem. It wasn't the design she wanted. He had read the class chat and had seen Izumi's explanation behind her current costume. TLDR, one company was sent the designs for her two costume designs. Her proper one and prototype one. Said company refused to make it. No idea why they would refuse to make the costume for the girl who won first place during the first year sports festival, but they did and passed it on to another company. The second company decided to be cheap, and instead of making a proper and a prototype costume, they combined the two into one. Sexy or not, even he knew that was a scummy thing to do. He liked girls wearing sexy outfits just as much as the next guy. But, since he had his revelation, he'd rather it not be to the discomfort of the girl wearing the outfit in question. Izumi didn't look comfortable wearing that costume. It's probably why she wanted the bunny version to be a prototype and not her proper costume. And now she is stuck with it until next semester. So, there he was, walking through the forest, randomly throwing a tennis ball at random trees, trying to get out any impure thoughts he had about Izumi because he really didn't want to cause the girl any more discomfort. Not when her girlfriend could easily throw him into orbit. He sighed. Changing one's image was difficult. He didn't want to cause the other girls discomfort anymore. The problem was showing that he was trying to change to the girls. He wasn't sure how to. He had had talks with Hound Dog about the subject, but even with the help, he wasn't sure how to apologize to them for his actions. He threw the tennis ball at a nearby tree, but sadly the trajectory was off, resulting in it flying off in an unintended direction and hitting someone on the head. Minoru quickly rushed off towards where the ball had gone, in doing so, noticed who it had hit. Ibara Shiozaki, the girl who almost made him choke to death. Nervously he walked towards her. Hey, sorry about that. Didn't mean to hit you with that. It's quite alright, Ibara said, looking up at him. It was an accident, after all, she said before passing the ball back to him. Minoru took the ball. Thank you, he said. He was about to turn to leave, but something was bothering him. Ibara. About what you said during internships. Why did you say that? You don't come across as someone who would like that kind of thing. Ibara frowned. My apologies if my words made you uncomfortable. No, they didn't make me uncomfortable, Minoru said, they just took me by surprise, that's all. Ibara nodded, I see. Well, if you must know, that was not a side of me I like others to know about, she said before she pulled a finger down her cheek, removing the makeup covering it and revealing a part of a green vein. Minoru's jaw dropped. You were affected by mutator as well? Ibara nodded. I was there, just on the edge of the affected area. I was only exposed to a small amount of his gas, so I didn't mutate as much as your classmate Tsuyu did. But I still mutated. My vines are now highly resilient to acid and fire but aren't as strong as they used to be. But mutator's curse did more than change us physically. It changed us mentally as well, she said quietly. After my change, I started having lustful thoughts pop into my head from time to time. I try to keep them in check the best I can, but sometimes, the words I try to suppress just come out, like back there. So you have problems controlling your perverted thoughts as well, Minoru said. Indeed I do, Ibara said with a nod. Are you two also suffering from the sin of lust? Minoru nodded before he sat down against an opposing tree. Yeah, you can say that. But for the longest time, I wasn't doing anything to change it. I thought what I was doing was normal, but I didn't realize I was causing the girls around me discomfort, he said. You see, I always dreamed of becoming a hero who was popular with the ladies, like really popular with the ladies. But, well, I didn't think boundaries were a thing and didn't respect the girls around me and made them uncomfortable. Didn't midnight sex ed class cover boundaries? Ibara asked. I wasn't paying attention to the lesson, Minoru replied sheepishly. I may have, in fact, fainted the moment she showed the slide of her in a really tight bikini. That was the second slide of the presentation, Ibara remarked. You missed the entire thing? Minoru nodded, slightly embarrassed. It wasn't until the sports festival that I realized my actions were harmful. I've been trying to be more respectful towards them, but it's not easy. It's not helped that I still get hurtful looks from them. Are they aware you are trying to change? Ibara asked. Minoru shook his head. Then I suggest that you seek forgiveness from them and apologies. If they know that you are trying to change, they may be more forgiving towards you. They do not know you are trying to change, so they will not change how they act towards you. Minoru perked up slightly. So that's what he was missing. He was trying to change, but hadn't made those around him aware of it in the first place. They don't know that he was trying to change. He needed to rectify that ASAP. Thank you, Minoru said as he stood up, bowed, and rushed off. Ibara smiled weakly before focusing back on her book. Glad that she has been able to help someone down a better path. Now if only there were something she could do about her own lustful and intrusive thoughts. Meanwhile, back at the 1A dorm, most of the class was downstairs in the living room mulling about. The girls were all together with Eri, the young girl currently braiding Tsu's hair. She had tried braiding Izumi's hair, but the girl's fluffy hair proved uncooperative. So she moved on to someone else whose hair would be more cooperative. Or compel her to fall asleep snuggling up to it. Suddenly, Minoru rushed into the building, looking like he had just run away from Godzilla. Minoru, are you alright? Tenya asked as he walked over to him. I'm fine, Minoru panted. I just ran from the other side of the campus. That's over 1.5 miles, Ijiro remarked. Why'd you do it? Because I have something I wish to say, Minoru replied before turning towards the girls and bowing. I'm sorry. What? Was the collective response from all of the gathered girls. Even the normally quiet and stoic Yui looked surprised. The only one who didn't respond was Eri, who was too preoccupied with braiding Tsu's hair. Minoru continued. It recently came to my attention that my actions towards you girls have been hurtful, and I wish to apologize for it. I was unaware that my actions were wrong and hurtful towards you. For that, I am deeply sorry, he said, head still bowed low. Whilst I don't expect you to forgive me, I am making steps to improve myself and change how I act. If I make any similar remarks in the future, then I apologize in advance. The girls all looked at Minoru with a mix of confused and surprised looks. They were not expecting him to apologize for his actions. Yes, they had noticed that he was acting differently. He was looking away from them a lot more than normal. But they weren't expecting this. Most of the girls were surprised by this sudden apology from Minoru. But there were a few who were a bit downhearted, Izumi included. Maybe she had been a bit too hard on Minoru. Yes, he was a perv, but she was usually a lot more forgiving than that. Perhaps her dislike of Katsuki was bleeding out. She had realized that her anger was quick to build around him, so maybe all those negative emotions she had about Katsuki that had been building up slowly since the incident were expressing themselves through a different outlet. She was going to have to find a way to vent that hate, wasn't she? Momo was the first to speak. Well, whilst I don't speak for all of us, I can say that, for myself at least, that whilst I do accept your apology, it will be a while before I can fully forgive you for all those comments you made about my body. Especially the ones about my chest. Same, Mina added. Don't think we never noticed all the comments you made about us. Because we sure as hell did. But if you're willing to change, then we're willing to let you prove it. Just don't expect any help from us, okay? You're still on thin ice. The rest of the girls gave similar responses. They were still wary of him, and whilst they weren't going to forgive him yet, they were accepting his apology. Minoru let out a sigh of relief as he stood back up, glad that his apology had been accepted. He knew that it'd be challenging to change his ways. He had been acting like that for a long time. But, now that the girls knew he was trying to change, things should be easier. Yes, he knew that there would be difficulties along the way, times where he would make an unsavory comment, but as long as he remembered apologizing for them, things should be fine. Hopefully, he could do this and get that haram he'd been dreaming about. Just as long as he remembered to treat the girls around him with respect. Katsuki was oh so glad to be back attending regular lessons at UA. His internship was shit, he learned nothing from the hero he worked with and generally hated it. Thankfully, he was back at UA, undergoing lessons, and generally getting his life back on track. Oh, how simple he wished it was. Those two girls who showed up just before they left for their internships, the two who had also done well during the sports festival. Chiharu Kazuki and Mei Hatsum were now on the hero course and would be joining them during heroics, which was interesting, to say the least. Might give Setsuna someone else to tease for a bit. He was really getting tired of her, especially since it was so hard to explode her at times. Being able to split up her body was annoying. Anyway, their first heroics class with them was something simple. Hostage rescue. Mei said that 1A had already done this exercise on their first day with All Might. Which was odd, as their first lesson with All Might was stopping a bomb from going off. Anyway, the scenario was similar to the one with the bomb. Two teams of two, one hero and one villain, would be fighting over a hostage. Villains had to keep the heroes away from the hostage or defeat the heroes. Heroes had to get the hostage out or defeat the villains. Simple enough. Well, it was simple. Up until they found out who the hostage was. Midnight. And she brought her own restraints, a lot of restraints. Katsuki's face had never been so red. So, after teams had been picked and the first groups had been chosen, which he thankfully wasn't a part of, everyone left to allow the villain team to set up, much to their dismay. Midnight was horrifyingly good at self-bondage. So, whilst almost everyone stood behind All Might as they watched the other two teams set up, which included a very flustered Juzo carrying a very much tied-up Midnight, he was desperately praying to whatever gods were out there that his team wouldn't be the villains. A feeling shared by his two teammates, Kami and Chiharu. Because due to there being 22 students, two of the teams would be teams of 3, and he was lucky, or unlucky, to be on a team of 3. He knew their team composition was good. He was the offensive guy, Chiharu defensive thanks to her mines, which were fucking scary, and Kami could use her glamours to make decoy combatants. Or hostages. He was really hoping that they wouldn't have to make additional hostages. One tied-up Midnight was enough. There was just one small problem. He was unsure how cooperative Kami was going to be today. She'd been different since his little discussion with the Baku squad. He knew the others didn't take the news of his past well, but Kami, he could tell, was the most affected by the news and had been acting differently around him. It didn't look like much to the untrained eye, but he could tell something was up with her. Her normally upbeat personality felt strained at times around him, her smiles felt more forced, and she'd sometimes forget advice he had given her at times. It was starting to get worrying. He knew something was up with her, but he didn't want to force the issue, just in case he made things worse by accident. So, am I the only one who doesn't want to be a villain for this? Chiharu remarked. I think being the heroes will have its own problems, fam, Kami added. Fair, Chiharu said, her blush getting worse because one of them was going to have to carry Midnight out. Whose idea was this? So, Chiharu, Katsuki said, trying to change the subject, what's it like training to be a hero? Thankfully, this tactic worked. It's not what I expected. It's a lot more chaotic. Then again, I probably should have expected it. I've spent a bit of time around Class 1A, and I'm honestly surprised my sanity is intact. The hero course can do that to you, lol, Kami said with a smile. Yeah, I can agree to that, Katsuki said, noticing Kami's eye twitch slightly. So, what's your mother's take on this? Chiharu suddenly looked a bit sheepish. Don't know, really. What do you mean you don't know? Katsuki asked, sounding confused. How could she not know her mother's take on her being a hero? Unless? Please tell me you talked to your parents about joining the hero course, right? No, Chiharu replied, I just want to give this a go and see if it suits me. Katsuki blinked repeatedly. He could feel his anger levels rising slowly. This girl took an opportunity to become a hero without consulting her parents first. What the fuck? You're kidding, right? Right. Did you decide to give heroics a go without consulting your parents first? What is wrong with you? This isn't just a simple 9-to-5 job you can just slip into. It's a dangerous profession that can get you killed if you're not prepared for it. Hell, you almost were killed during the internships. What about your father? What does he think about this? He's dead, Chiharu replied quietly. He died during the Avalon War. Katsuki face-bombed. That made this entire situation so much worse. He let out a low groan. You are kidding me. So, you decided to become a hero without consulting your mother first, who probably had a heart attack when she found out what you were doing. Please tell me you called your mother after the Children of Blood attack? No, Chiharu replied, she's been calling and texting me a lot, but I've been ignoring them. That's the worst thing you could dash, Katsuki fumed before he quickly stopped himself, took several deep breaths, and got out the most critical piece of support equipment he had. A stress ball. Once he was sufficiently calmed down, he said, that's the worst thing you could possibly do. Your mother will be worried about you right now, and the last thing you want to do is ghost her. I don't know what happened between you and your mother, but you can't just ghost her like that, especially after villains literally attacked you. The fact that your father was killed during a villain attack doesn't help things, he said, still squeezing the stress ball. Becoming a hero isn't something you can just do. It's a big thing that will affect a lot of people in your life, especially your parents. Being a hero is a dangerous job with a high mortality rate. You can't just jump in without consulting your parents first. Especially if you've already lost one of them during a villain attack. Chiharu huffed, not a good sign. I don't exactly have the best relationship with my mother. She abandoned me in a care home. That doesn't matter, you still almost died in a similar way to your father, and she's still going to be terrified of losing you. It'll give her peace of mind if she hears you're fine from you personally. Katsuki said, noting the shocked look on Chiharu's face. Take it from someone who's messed up big time. And I mean big time. You need to contact your mother about this. Because, quite frankly, she's going to have been horrified by all of this. Chiharu frowned and looked down. He didn't know what was going through the girl's head, but hopefully, he had managed to knock some sense into her because, holy fuck, how do you mess up that badly? He didn't know the entire family situation, but for crying out loud, she should have put more thought into her decision to be a hero. Here's what you're going to do. Once this lesson is over and you have some free time, call your mother. Katsuki continued, she no doubt needs to hear from you. And continuing to ghost her is not going to help anyone, especially you. Chiharu slowly looked up at him before nodding. Good. Progress has been made. Hopefully. He also noticed that Kami had perked up slightly, very slightly. He didn't know if he was making any progress with her, seeing that he was unsure what the problem was to begin with, but he hoped that he was improving in her eyes. The match was suddenly called, and the teams returned. All Might then went over the MVP and called the next two teams. Katsuki's team was one of the two called. And they were the villains. Well, shit. Later that day, Chiharu lay on her bed looking up at the ceiling. She was currently calming herself down from the gay panic she had from having to deal with Midnight as a hostage. Because holy fuck, she did not want to deal with that again. Kami making several decoy Midnights did not help things, Did the woman really need to tie herself up that much? Because that was an excessive amount of restraints. How was she even able to apply some of them to herself anyway? She also might be into bondage now. There was also something else as well. That Katsuki kid had given her a lot to think about. Yes, she hated her mother for abandoning her. But did she deserve all that hate? Yes, she left her alone at a shitty care home, seldom coming around to visit her and always saying she was busy with work. But what would her dad think of her actions? How sad would he be to see his wife and daughter fight? Did her mother deserve to lose someone else? She knew how her mother felt when her dad died, broken, scared, horrified. Alone. Chitose often called Akito the light to lead her way. And after he died and Chitose and Chiharu were reunited, her mother spent days holding Chiharu, keeping her close and refusing to let her go. Akito's death had hit them both hard, Chitose especially. The days after her dad's death were probably the closest the two had been. How easy it was to forget the good and bad times when it was convenient to. Thinking back to her internship, she remembered just how close she came to dying from someone's explosive snot. Embarrassing, yes, but if it weren't for Psycho, she'd be dead. Did her mother deserve to go through losing someone again? Anyway, when she first saw the internship request from Iwabumi, she knew that if she did want to become a hero, she would be the one she would intern with. But she had two reasons for that. One, she knew a lot more about the business side of heroics, plus she knew her mother was going to publish a story which would throw shade over heroes who focus on side businesses instead of being a hero. Iwabumi included. She knew interning with Iwabumi would shock her mother and disrupt her media empire. Was that the only reason why she took the internship? Did she only take this opportunity for a chance of revenge against her mother? Was that her reason to be a hero, to get back at your mother for abandoning her? What a stupid reason to be a hero. And whilst her mother did post the story, there was no mention of Iwabumi anywhere within the publication. She sighed and picked up her phone. She needed to sort this shit out, and the only way she knew how to do that was to call her mother. She needed to clear the air between them. The phone was answered almost as soon as it started to ring. Chiharu. Her mother's voice cried out from the phone, "Oh, thank the gods you're alright." "Hey, Mom," Chiharu said sheepishly, "sorry for not calling you." "Damn right, you should be." Chitose shouted, causing Chiharu to wince, "Do you have any idea what it was like to find out that you were interning with Iwabumi as a hero intern from one of my reporters? Because that was not a good feeling. And then you were involved in a mass villain attack followed by hearing nothing from you. I almost had a heart attack after I heard about it. I thought I had lost you too. I was desperate to hear from you, to hear something, anything, just to be sure that you were alright. But you didn't dash. Why didn't you respond?" she asked as she began to cry. Chiharu frowned. She had heard her mother this sad before and didn't pay much mind. But now that he had a moment to focus, she sounded exactly like she did after Akito died. She didn't mean to use her father's death against her. That was a bad time for both of them. "I'm sorry, Mother," Chiharu said, "I just wasn't in the mood to talk to you. You did abandon me in a shithole for most of my life." "I know, and I'm sorry," Chitose said. "I know I've been a terrible mother to you. To be honest, I never really planned to start a family. It's why I left your father to care for you. But when I heard that Akito was killed, I feared you were also killed. I spent days trying to find out if you were alive or dead. I couldn't bear the thought of losing you both. I was just glad you were still alive. But, after I found out about the attack, I thought I had lost you as well," she said. "I'm not against you being a dual course student on the hero course. It's just that I would have liked to have talked about it with you first. This is a big decision to make, and I would have liked some input on it. Being a hero is a dangerous job, Chiharu. And I can't bear to lose you as well. I'm sorry, Mother. I should have consulted you about this first," Chiharu said with a frown. "This was a big choice that I tried to trivialize, and I'm sorry for not telling you about this first. But, even so, I can't forgive you for abandoning me like that at that care home. My life was hell at that place, and you promised me that things would change, but they didn't. I know, and I'm sorry about that, Chito said, but I promise to make it up to you. Just give me a chance to make things up to you, please. Chiharu sighed. One chance. You have one chance to prove yourself, mother. Just one. Mess it up, and I'm not talking to you again. And if I hear that same old excuse of I was busy one more time. Don't worry, I won't be making any more excuses like that, Chito said. Not anymore. Good, Chiharu said with a slight smile. She wasn't entirely happy about this, but it had to be done. They had both suffered enough since Akito's death, and her father no doubt wouldn't want to see his two favorite girls fighting. There was the sudden sound of motion from the other end, as well as someone talking, but it was faint. Shit. I'm sorry, but I have to go. I was in the middle of a big meeting when you called, and I may have rushed out without saying anything when I saw that you were calling me. I'll call you back once I'm done. Promise. Okay, Chiharu said quietly. I'll talk to you later, she said before she ended the call. She sighed as she put the phone down. That had gone better than expected. Yes, she still despised her mother, but Katsuki had been right. Chitose was horrified by her choice. She should have told her about it, not wait for someone else to tell her. She would have told her dad about this if he were alive. She sighed and shook her head. She was going to need snuggles after this. Paxton groaned in annoyance, his head buried in a pile of paperwork. He was oh so very fucking annoyed right now. The door to his workshop opened, and Hilala walked in, followed by two men. One was a tall, lean man with gray eyes who wore a dark green sleeveless bodysuit with a white belt, black boots, and a skull-shaped mask covering his face. The other was a rather well-built man wearing a black and gray bodysuit that covered his entire body and gray boots. Paxton, Hilala said as she walked over to the man, "Are you all right?" "Nah, he's fine." "He's still breathing," the man wearing the bodysuit, also known as Twice, said calmly before suddenly looking and sounding panicked, "He's dead. We're all gonna die." The man with the skull mask, also known as Tesla, sighed, "Why are you like this?" "For your information, I am very much alive," Paxton said, sounding very tired. "I'm just totally, utterly, fucking done." "Oh, what happened?" Hilala asked seductively as she leaned down and put her arms around Paxton. "That May girl from UA just made DNA-encoded armor," Paxton replied. "It took me years to discover how to make DNA-encoded armor using Karasorum as a base. And she's done it within a fucking month. Where the hell did she even get Karasorum from anyway? That shit is expensive. One of the students in Class 1A is able to create almost anything," Tesla said. "She probably got the Karasorum from her. That or she managed to buy a small amount of the stuff, but that's rather unlikely." Paxton looked up. "Doesn't explain how she was able to discover something that took me years to discover." He shouted, "I spent years working on Karasorum and its properties. It's how I came up with the idea for a quirk emulator. Years, I say. And she's managed to do that in weeks. Maybe she's your daughter?" Twice remarked just as Argonaut walked into the room behind him. All eyes suddenly turned towards Twice, a mix of confused and surprised looks on their faces. "What the fuck did I just walk in on?" Argonaut asked, wondering if he should turn around and leave. "So, you are, anyway. You have a spy in UA?" Tesla asked, opting to ignore Twice's remark. "Indeed I do," Paxton replied, also choosing to ignore Twice. "Nothing too special, just a kid in general education who was one of my old clients. He's spying on the hero course for me. Mainly Izumi Midoriya to find out her relationship with All for One. He's very good at his job of getting information from the other courses. Too good, seeing that he found this out." "You're sure she's not your daughter?" Twice remarked before he was slapped upside the head by Argonaut. "Oh, I'm sure she's not mine," Paxton said. "I may have slept with multiple women long ago. But I made sure that none of them got pregnant. Trust me, I wore protection. Not that I can have children, I'm sterile. So no, Mei Hatsum is not my daughter, even if there is a slight possibility I may have slept with her mother one time. But I can't be sure. I visited Japan once and met 3 women with the surname Hatsum, and I only slept with one of them. Still a 1 in 3 chance, Twice said, admit it, she's your daughter. Paxton sighed, no, I will not. Not when it's biologically impossible for me to be her dad. So, I have no idea what's going on and only have a general idea of what's happening, but do I need to kill someone? Argonaut asked. Not yet, Paxton replied, right now, the girl's no threat. But the moment she even thinks about making something like a quirk emulator, we're killing her, got it? I don't want anyone else developing a quirk emulator before I'm ready to show mine off. I won't have 10 years spent trying to perfect it go to waste, he said before he stood up. Anyway, Twice, Tesla, I'm glad to see you two settling in nicely. Apologies for not seeing you as much as I would have liked, but I've been a bit busy with the sudden situation with Hummer Eyes. Once again, I am sorry we couldn't extract with Barrows, Argonaut said. Ah, don't worry about it, Paxton said, waving it off. Probably wouldn't have been a good idea to bring her back anyway, seeing that she very much wants you dead. But at least we know there's something up with Hummer Eyes. Anyway, how are you two holding up? It's nice, Tesla replied, not what I expected from how my dad described it, but then again, that was back in Avalon's heyday. Plus, he was a scientist, not an active combatant. And your dad was one of my best employees, Paxton said with a smile. His work on the temporal teleporters was magnificent. We wouldn't have been able to pull off half the stuff we did without his help. And trust me, we will break him out of prison. I need his help with a few things. Don't worry, sir. When the day we get my old man out of prison, I'll be ready for it, Tesla said. Good, Paxton said before turning towards Twice and Twice. How are you doing, my friend? I'm fine. I actually like it here, Twice replied calmly. I'm not fine, and I hate it here. Paxton smiled. Well, I'm glad you're enjoying your time here at Avalon. I'm just wondering when I'm getting deployed on another mission, Tesla said. The training was helpful, and turning on the poorly named League of Villains was nice, but I'm raring for some more action. Oh, don't worry, I already have something planned for you, Paxton said. I need you and Hilala to infiltrate a party held by a Douglas Richard. It's a high society party, so dress formally. Oh, must we? Hilala asked, sounding annoyed. You know we hate parties like that. The dresses are too formal, the food lackluster, and the portions tiny. Everyone there dresses and acts far too formally for our liking, and there aren't any stripper poles. Stripper poles? Seriously? Tesla said, a frown hidden behind his mask. It's a formal banquet and business meeting, not a university student's night out. And we dislike those kinds of parties, Hilala retorted. How you lot can stand such formal gatherings is beyond us. Where are the massive piles of meat? The large tankers of drink? Where's the sex? It's like you people don't know how to have fun. Tesla sighed. Dad never said anything about having to deal with a tall green-skinned Amazonian woman with a dislike of high society. We're a massive swarm of billions of insects that eat people, Hilala said. Refinement is not in our vocabulary. He probably never met her, Twice added before saying, please crush my head between your heavily muscled thighs. Where the fuck did that come from? Tesla wondered. Don't worry about it, Hilala said with a smile, we are more than used to such responses from people. Twice gulped, I am scared, he said. And aroused. Please, my queen, end me. Why did you let this guy join us? Argonaut asked. Because what's more dangerous than fighting one of you? Paxton asked with a smile. Fighting 3 of you. Argonaut nodded, fair. The 2 clones he made of me did manage to kill a good number of people. Shame I couldn't be there myself. But then again, someone did throw a ship at me, so controlling a Terminator was, in hindsight, a good idea. Well, there was a risk of something bad happening to you, Paxton said. You were going up against a bioengineered monster. I just didn't expect someone to throw a fucking ship at you. But then again, who does? Just a shame Durandal found out about the Terminator you were piloting. Should we be worried about Durandal? He does have a quirk emulator, Hilala asked. Paxton smiled. Oh, we shouldn't have to worry about him for too long. His emulator was only a prototype. And I've had 10 years to perfect it, he said before he snapped his fingers. Instantly a door opened, and a robot wolf walked out of it. It was similar in design to Durandal, but it looked more advanced. A lot more advanced. The robot came to a stop a few feet away from them. Greetings, the robot wolf said, its voice cold and without empathy. I am Tycho, Durandal's brother. That will be it for this part. I hope everyone enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like and comment if you want part 50. If you want to hear more from me, subscribe. I hope to see you all in the next one.